So we've looked at label and text box. The third of the controls you're going to use over and over again on every single form is the button. And the button control is the primary way that users cause actions to occur. And after you set the text of the button, the place you're going to write a lot of code is the click event. The click event occurs when the user selects the button. So you'll put into the click event handler the code you want to execute when the user clicks the button. Now there are things you can do with the button. For example, you might want to control whether users can click a button. You can set the enabled property to true or false. So you might disable a button until some condition is met and then enable it. So you can enable and disable buttons. To save screen real estate, you might use a single button for multiple purposes and then just change the text. So in the demo, we'll see a form that has an add button and a cancel button. You'll click add when you want to add a record, and then disable the add button because you're in the middle of currently adding, and then you would enable the cancel button. And then if you clicked the cancel button, then you would disable that and enable the add button. Now if you have screen real estate issues, you could just use a single button that says add, and then when you click add, the button changes to say cancel. When you click cancel, the button changes back to say add. Both of those techniques will work. You can change the appearance of a button, and to do that you can use the flat style property. You can set it to standard, flat, or pop-up to change the way the button looks, and we'll see that shortly. Earlier we saw how to display an image and text at the same time on a label. You can do the same thing with a button. You can use the image or the background image property to specify what image you want to display in the button. Then you can use the image align property to control where the image appears. And if there's also text on the button, you can use the text align property to control where the text appears. Now you'll find yourself in your applications creating a lot of dialog boxes. So for example, the user tries to close a form. You want to pop up a dialog box that says, do you want to save your changes? Yes or no. Or you'll have a dialog box that has OK and cancel buttons. Now, of course, the user can click on these, but you also want the user to be able to essentially select the yes or OK button or the no or cancel button using the keyboard. And to do that, you can make a button the default or the cancel button. So if you set the form's accept button property to the OK or the yes button, then that will be the default button, and therefore, if the user presses enter on the keyboard, that's equivalent to clicking the button. Then you can use the cancel button property of the form to identify which button is the cancel button, the no button, the cancel button. And then if the user presses escape on the keyboard, that's the same as clicking that button. So let's go see how to use these techniques with buttons. So here's the common Windows Forms Controls Demos main form, and let's look at the buttons form. I'll click Button Controls, and here's a form with several buttons on it. So if this were a data entry form, it might have a button for Add and a button for Cancel. And if I click Add, then I want the Add button to be disabled. If I click Add and I'm going to add a record, whether it's a customer or an order or whatever, I don't want to be able to add a record if I'm in the middle of adding one, so I'll disable Add. When I click Cancel or the Save button, then I'll enable Add. Now if I have screen real estate issues, I might use one button to do both. So when I click Add, that button now changes to Cancel. And when I click Cancel, it changes back to Add. Let's go take a look at the code behind these buttons. In the Add button's click event handler, I just set the enabled property for that button to false. And then in the Cancel button's click event handler, I set the enabled property for the Add button to true. Now if I'm just using one button, which I've called the Add Cancel button, well, if the Add Cancel button's text is currently Add, then I know that the user has clicked the Add button, and I'll change the text to Cancel. If the text is not Add, meaning it's Cancel, then if this code runs, I know the user clicked the Cancel button, and I'll change the Add Cancel Buttons text back to Add. I would also, of course, have code in there to actually cancel or add, but I don't need that right now. These buttons show the 4 choices for the flat style, and the flat style property controls the appearance of the button when the user hovers over it and then clicks it. So if you set the flat style to standard, the button appears three-dimensional, like this one does. If you set the flat style to system, then the appearance of the control is determined by the operating system. And in this case, that's the same as standard. It's three-dimensional. If you set the flat style to flat, the button appears flat. It does highlight when you hover over it. And if you use pop-up, then the button appears flat until you hover over it, and now it appears three-dimensional, and when you click it, it behaves like buttons where the flat style is set to standard and system. If I click Save, then I get a dialog that pops up that asks me if I want to save a file. If I want to save the file, I can click Yes, which will save the file, but I can also press the Enter key on the keyboard. Because on this dialog is a form and it has the Accept Button property set to Yes. If the answer is no, I can either click No or press Escape. Okay, let's go and take a look at that. The Confirm Save dialog is an actual form, and I've set the Accept Button property to the Yes button and the Cancel Button property to the No button. And on the main form here, set the Flat Style property for the various buttons just by selecting from this drop-down. Now on this form there are 2 buttons with images. If I click the AppDev button, I can get more information on AppDev, and if I click the Help button, I can get help. So for these, I'm using images in 2 different ways. For the More Info button, I've set the background image to the AppDev logo, and I've selected Stretch for the background image layout to cause that to fill out the button. I also have text in here, and that text is aligned in the bottom center. So I have both text and an image on this button. For the Help button, I have no text. I just have an image, and that image is aligned in the center. And because it's a fairly small image, I manually resized the button. So in this demo, we've mostly seen controlling the look and feel of the buttons. The real work is done in the Click Event Handler, and that's where you write the code that you want to execute when the user clicks a button.